The power of the word. Quote, by thy words thou shalt be justified, and by thy words thou shalt be condemned. Matthew 12, verse 37. A person, knowing the power of the word, becomes very careful of their conversation. They have only to watch the reaction to their words to know that they, quote, will not return to them or to me empty. Isaiah 55, verse 11. Through the spoken word, people are continually making laws for themselves. I knew a man who said, quote, I always miss a tram. It invariably pulls out just as I arrive, end quote. His daughter, on the other hand, said, quote, I always catch a tram. It's sure to come just as I get there, end quote. This occurred for years. Each had made a separate law for themselves, one of failure, the other of success. This is the psychology of superstitions. The horseshoe or rabbit's foot, bracelet, or whatever thing we hold contains no power of its own, but a person's spoken word and belief that it will bring them good luck creates expectancy in the subconscious mind and attracts a lucky situation. I find, however, this will not work when a person has advanced spiritually and knows a higher law. One cannot turn back and must put away graven images. Exodus chapter 20, verse 3. For example, two men in my class had had great successes in business for several months when suddenly everything went to smash. We tried to analyze the situation, and I found instead of making their affirmations and looking to God for success and prosperity, they had each bought, quote, a lucky monkey. I said, quote, oh, I see. You have been trusting in the lucky monkey instead of God. Put away the lucky monkeys and call on the law of forgiveness. For people have the power to forgive or neutralize their mistakes. They decided to throw away the lucky monkeys, and all went well again. This does not mean, however, that one should throw away every, quote, lucky ornament or horseshoe about the house, but they must recognize that the power back of it is the one and only power, which is God, and that the object simply gives him a feeling of expectancy. I was with a friend one day who was in deep despair. In crossing the street, she picked up a horseshoe. Immediately, she was filled with joy and hope. She said God had sent her the horseshoe in order to keep up her courage. It was indeed at that moment about the only thing that could have registered in her consciousness. Her hope became faith, and she ultimately made a wonderful demonstration. I wish to make the point clear that the men previously mentioned were depending on the monkeys alone, while this woman recognized the power back of the horseshoe. I know, in my own case, it took a long while to get out of a belief that a certain thing brought disappointment. If the thing happened, disappointment invariably followed. I found the only way I could make a change in the subconscious was by asserting, quote, that there are not two powers, there is only one power, and that is God. Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 4. Therefore, there are no disappointments, and this thing means a happy surprise. I noticed a change at once, and happy surprises commenced coming my way. I have a friend who said nothing could induce her to work or walk under the ladder. I said, if you are afraid, you are giving in to a belief in two powers, good and evil, instead of one. As God is absolute, there can be no opposing power, unless a person makes the false power of evil for themselves. To show you believe in only one power, which is God, and that there is no power or reality in evil, walk under the next ladder you see. Soon after, she went to her bank. She wished to open her deposit box in the safe deposit box vault, and there stood a ladder on her pathway. It was impossible to reach the box without passing under the ladder. She quailed with fear and turned back. She could not face the lion on her pathway. However, when she reached the street, my words rang in her ears, and she decided to return and walk under it. It was a big moment in her life, for ladders had held her in bondage for years. She retraced her step to the vault, and the ladder was no longer there. This so often happens. If one is willing to do a thing they are afraid to do, they find they do not have to do it. It is the law of non-resistance, which is so little understood. Someone has said that courage contains genius and magic. Face a situation fearlessly, and there is no situation to face. It falls away of its own weight. The explanation is that fear attracted the ladder on the woman's pathway, and fearlessness removed it. Thus, the invisible forces are ever working for a person who is always pulling the strings themselves, though they do not know it. Owing to the vibratory power of words, whatever a person voices, they begin to attract. Owing to the vibratory power of words, whatever a person voices, they begin to attract. Because words have vibration. People who continually speak of disease invariably attract it. After a person knows the truth, they cannot be too careful of their words. For example, I have a friend who often says on the phone, quote, "Do come to me and have a fine old-fashioned chat," end quote. This, quote, old-fashioned chat, end quote, means an hour of about 500 to 1,000 destructive words, the principal topics being loss, lack, failure, and sickness, things that go on in society that have no good use for the consciousness. I reply, quote, "No, I thank you. I have had enough old-fashioned chats in my life. They are too expensive. But I will be glad to have a new-fashioned chat and talk about what we want, not what we don't want." There's an old saying that a person only dares use their words for three purposes: to heal, bless, or prosper. What a person says of others will be said of them, and what they wish for another, they are wishing for themselves. Curses, like chickens, come home to roost. If a person wishes someone bad luck, they are sure to attract bad luck themselves. If they wish to aid someone to success, they are wishing and aiding themselves to success. The body may be renewed and transformed through the spoken word and clear vision, and disease may be completely wiped out of the consciousness. The metaphysician knows that all disease has a mental correspondence, and in order to heal the body, one must first, quote, heal the soul, end quote. The soul is the subconscious mind, and it must be saved from wrong thinking. In the 23rd Psalm, we read, quote, He restoreth my soul. Psalm 23, verse 3. This means that the subconscious mind or soul must be restored with the right ideas, and the mystical marriage is the marriage of the soul and the spirit, or the subconscious and the superconscious mind. They must be one. When the subconscious is flooded with the perfect ideas of the superconscious, God and man are one. My Father and I are one. John 10, verse 30. That is, Jesus and humanity are one with the realm of perfect ideas. Humanity is in God's image and likeness and imagination, and is given power and dominion over all created things, their mind, body, and affairs. It is safe to say that all sickness and unhappiness come from the violation of the law of love. Quote, I give you a new commandment. Love one another. John chapter 13, verse 34. And in the game of life, love or goodwill takes every trick. For example, a woman I know had for years an appearance of a terrible skin disease. The doctors told her it was incurable, and she was in despair. She was on the stage, and she feared she would soon have to give up her profession, and she had no other means of support. She, however, procured a good engagement, and on the opening night made a great hit. She received flattering notices from the critics and was joyful and elated. The next day, she received a notice of dismissal. A man in the cast had been jealous of her success and had caused her to be sent away. She felt hatred and resentment taking complete possession of her, and she cried out, "Oh God, don't let me hate that man." That night, she walked for hours in the silence. She said, quote, I soon came into a very deep silence. I seemed to be at peace with myself, with the man, and with the whole world. I continued this for 2 following nights, and on the 3rd day, I found I was healed completely of the skin disease. In asking for love or goodwill, she had fulfilled the law. For, quote, if you love your neighbor as yourself, you have fulfilled the law. Romans chapter 13, verse 8. And the disease, quote, which came from subconscious resentment, was wiped out. Continual criticism produces rheumatism, as critical, inharmonious thoughts cause unnatural deposits in the blood, which settle in the joints. False growths are caused by jealousy, hatred, unforgiveness, fear, etc. Every disease is caused by a mind not at ease. I said once in my class, quote, "There is no use asking anyone, what is the matter with you? Rather, we might just as well say, who is the matter with you?" Unforgiveness is the most prolific cause of disease. It will harden arteries or liver and affect the eyesight. In its train are endless ills. I called on a woman one day who said she was ill from having eaten a poisoned oyster. I replied, quote, "Oh no, the oyster was harmless. You poisoned the oyster. What's the matter with you?" She answered, quote, "Oh, about 19 people," end quote. She had quarreled with 19 people and had become so inharmonious that she attracted the wrong oyster. Any inharmony on the external indicates there is mental inharmony on the inside. Quote, "As the within, so the without," end quote. Man's only enemies are within. Quote, "One's enemy will be the members of one's own household," or "a man's enemy are those of his household." Matthew chapter 10, verse 36. Personality is one of the last enemies to be overcome, as this planet is taking its initiation in love. It was Christ's message, quote, "And on earth, peace to those on whom God favor rests." Peace and goodwill to all men. Luke chapter 2, verse 14. The enlightened person, therefore, endeavors to perfect themselves upon their neighbor. Their work is with themselves, to send out goodwill and blessings to everyone. And the marvelous thing is that if one blesses a person, they have no power to harm them. For example, a man came to me asking treat for success in business. He was selling machinery, and a rival appeared on the scene with what he proclaimed was a better machine. And my friend feared defeat. I said, first of all, we must wipe out all fear and know that God protects your interest and that the divine idea must come out of the situation. That is, the right machine will be sold by the right man to the right man. And I added, quote, "Don't hold one critical thought towards that man." Don't hold one critical thought towards that man. Bless him all day and be willing not to sell your machine if it isn't the divine idea. So he went to the meeting fearless, non-resistant, and blessing the other man. He said the outcome was very remarkable. The other man's machine refused to work on the day, and he sold ease without the slightest difficulty. Quote, "But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you." Matthew chapter 5, verse 44. Goodwill produces a great aura of protection about the one who sends it. And, quote, "No weapon that is formed against you shall prosper. Isaiah 54, verse 17. In other words, love and goodwill destroy the enemies within oneself. Therefore, one has no enemies on the outside. There is peace on earth for them who send goodwill to man. End of chapter.